Hello, hello, hello. It is good to see you all. In cases this is your first time here, my name is Dr. Julie Allig, aka the Data Diva. Welcome back to those of you who've joined me before. Hello to you who are catching the replay. And if you are watching me live today on a Friday afternoon, I'm looking over my shoulder here at the traffic that I'm going to be battling with pretty soon. Thank you so much for joining me. It's a pleasure. I am here every Friday afternoon. The past few Friday afternoons have been much later. Right now, it's like 4:45 in the afternoon here on the East Coast of the United States because I've been teaching, but I'm just about done with the class that I'm teaching. And so I will be back next week, back to my 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific live stream time. So keep in mind that you can watch this like you are right now, maybe on LinkedIn as a LinkedIn Live, or you can watch also on my YouTube channel, and you can catch the replays over there too. And if you've got any questions over there, make sure you leave a comment, leave a question. I'll be more than happy to answer just as soon as I see it. Now, last Friday, I didn't have a live stream because I was attending the New Hampshire Bar Association's mid-year meeting. So for those of you who might not be aware, I live in New Hampshire right now. And the Bar Association had its mid-year meeting last week. And one of my practice areas is working with law firms to figure out exactly what's going on in their firm, which of their practice areas are making profits, how to get better leads, how to get more of those great clients, the clients that they absolutely love, right? And so I was there. And as luck would have it, one of the themes was AI and the legal space. And so, of course, you know me, that completely piqued my interest. So I was there for just about all of the day, talking with attorneys about data and how analyzing their data can really boost how their law firm performs, that sort of thing. But at the tail end of the day, I was lucky enough to see a keynote speaker and a panel of attorneys all talking about AI and how AI can help or hinder a law firm or more generally, an attorney's practice. It was fun talking to all the attorneys that I saw there. It was interesting, though. I got a lot of quizzical looks. Data law firms. I don't think all the attorneys really had ever kind of put those together, which is not surprising. But it was interesting, and I had some really good conversations actually with a few of the conference attendees. But like I said, what really was piquing my interest was these other attorneys that were talking about AI or artificial intelligence. And in particular, they were talking about generative AI. So if you all are familiar with this is ChatGPT, which most people have at least heard of by now. There are others out there, other generative AI models out there that the public can use. So we've got Anthropic's product, Claude.ai. We've got Perplexity AI. We've got Google, which just last week announced Gemini. They're rebranded. generative AI. There's so many of them out there. And so I wanted to hear, like, what the heck do other attorneys think about using this? And so, three takeaways that I had from the meeting, and in particular about AI. The first is that AI is here to stay in terms of the legal field, and boy, is it going to be disruptive for the traditional law firm business model. Now, I know it's very trendy to call things disruptors, but I saw this happening in real time. I saw it from the questions that were being asked among the audience of the panel and among the panelists among themselves. I saw this happening in real time. It truly does have the potential to completely upend the business model. So let's say you're an attorney who bills by the hour. Now this new tool enters the scene, and all of a sudden, all of the research that you need to do is so much quicker. And by so much, I'm meaning I'm seeing research papers talking about going from hours and hours and hours down to minutes to summarize documents, to summarize depositions, to summarize case law. I have another word to say about case law in a minute, but let's just say that you're an attorney who bills by the hour. And now all of a sudden, it doesn't take you 10, 20, 30, 40 hours to do this part of the preparation, right, for a case. It takes just a fraction of that. Where did all of your hourly billing go? That's a pretty big hit to your business model. Let's say that maybe you're an attorney who doesn't use AI. You don't think it does the job that you need done. You don't think it can replicate human work. You don't trust it. Fair point, all of that. You continue billing by the hour. Your competition doesn't. Your competition decides to leverage generative AI and cut their build hours in half or by 2/3. Because again, these are the kind of reductions in time that we're seeing being able to be done by these generative AI models, right? So how are you going to respond when the attorney across the street, attorney in the next town over, suddenly is able to offer a much lower bill for their clients? Now, we're not talking about the quality, okay? We're leaving that by the wayside for the moment. But do you see, this could really impact an attorney, a law firm, if you're not paying attention and if you're not thinking about your business model, right? Now, I had an asterisk a couple of minutes ago about case law and summarizing case law or doing case law research, something like that, finding cases and all. Yes, you can't rely on these generative AI models necessarily to be able to cite case law. And, litigators especially are the ones who want to make sure that they're not getting caught by this. But because as we know, and as we've been hearing in the press, there are literally every day, if not once or twice a week, examples of attorneys who are getting sanctioned by the judge, by the bar, because they have turned in something, they've submitted something to the court where the case actually doesn't exist. So again, generative AI models do have the possibility of what's called hallucinating. And so basically making up information. That said, if you're using the generative AI, not so much to find cases, right? Do that kind of Westlaw, LexisNexis research, that sort of thing, but instead do summaries of documents that are in front of you, the risk of that is much, much, much lower. So here we start getting into some of the nuances of how are we going to actually use this tool? And are we going to use it to just create a document out of whole cloth, something we're going to file without double checking, right? Or are we going to use it for something to summarize? I mean, when you've got pages and pages of transcript or depositions or something like that, something like these models can really come in handy. That's what I've been hearing. That's what I was seeing at the conference last week. So, number one, the possibility to really upend your business model, even if you don't realize you've got a business model and that it's potentially threatened. How are you going to respond? How will your firm respond to this? The second that I saw, the second big takeaway that I saw was around using AI and knowledge management. And here, this was something that came up with the panel and the panelists. So a couple of the panelists, they've been attorneys for a while, for several decades. They're seasoned, well-respected members of the New Hampshire bar, and they've put a lot of thought into these tools. And one of them mentioned that, one possibility is that these could be a solution to law firms' knowledge management problem, right? So there are already so many products on the market to try to help firms catalog information, catalog all their knowledge and everything. But what could we basically outsource that to generative AI to do? Something like that. So let's think. So this panelist, and among the questions, there were a couple of examples that came up. One of them was, again, being able to summarize and using AI to help summarize when you've got a trial that's going on, it's a multi-day trial, and you need to provide daily updates. Something like taking the documents that were entered into evidence in that day, taking whatever your notes might be if you wrote them, right? Or if you were typing them out, feeding those in and coming up with, a 2-3 paragraph summary, something like that you shoot off to the rest of the team. You might shoot off to some of the partners, whatever, just so they know what's going on. And you yourself don't have to be taking the time to do that. So think about it that way also. Think about, is it going to be 100% accurate? Probably not. No. Will it be 75, 85% accurate? Yeah. It's going to get you quite a head start. And thinking along that line of using these generative AI models as giving you a good solid head start is what we see other industries using this for. So I refer to it kind of like the blank screen dilemma when we need to start writing a document, start writing a paper, when we need to write I've seen a lot of marketing professionals, when you need to start writing some ad copy or something, you start generating that in a generative AI model, right? Same thing here. Feeding in the documents, being clear in your prompts, right? About exactly what you want the tool to do and how you want it to handle different arguments, different this, that, the other. So there's definitely a role here for really good prompt engineering. But again, being able to just offload that, outsource that to these models, and it's so much less time that the attorney, him or herself, has to spend. Which, if we think about this also, in terms of the first takeaway that I mentioned, and now this one, generative AI is really cutting down the amount of time that it takes for some of these typical kind of summary tasks that we need to do. And yes, that's potentially going to be a threat to the business model. But then think also, if you and your team are not having to spend all those hours on summarizing, right? Researching, that sort of thing. Instead, if all that is done, then you've got a whole lot more time that you could be billing, right? But you've got a whole lot more time to really think creatively, to ideate, to mull over different arguments and counter arguments you might want to make. That also is a big boon to using these sorts of things. So, yes, cutting down the amount of time, but thinking about the inverse of that, how much time that opens up for the more higher level kind of thought that attorneys a lot of times gets mired in the details, mired in the summaries, right? Because there's just so much to do. The third takeaway that I saw was that no matter what, attorneys were, I was hearing this, they are still leery of using AI. And like with many professions that I'm seeing as I'm out there participating in different groups, as I'm hearing more case studies of different companies that are incorporating generative AI into their workflows, this is not the end all be all. And here I think attorneys are I give them a lot of credit for being leery of this. Like I mentioned earlier, there's always the possibility of your Gen AI model hallucinating, right? And whatever the output is from your Gen AI model, it's only going to be as good as whatever you put in and whatever you tell it to do. So again, that prompt engineering, right? That I mentioned before. So it kind of goes back to that whole garbage in, garbage out, which, yeah, there's definitely still a need for humans to be in the loop here. We still need to have someone, a person, critically reviewing the output of this. We still need someone directing this tool exactly what to do and how to do it and what arguments it can make, what biases it needs to be on the lookout for, that sort of thing. So there's definitely still a lot of human interaction that needs to happen with this. And attorneys are right. There is, especially when, oh my gosh, you've got, other members of the bar in other states getting sanctioned for coming up with complete made up fantasy cases. Absolutely. But that said, I wouldn't want the legal industry or any industry, right? I wouldn't want the imperfections that we've still got with these models to keep you from giving them a try. Again, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Fair enough, that's overused, but there really is a lot that these models can do as a tool to help alleviate some of the more rote tasks that many professions, legal included, have to do. Also, if we think about the research that's being done in the field of AI in education and how these generative AI models can be used in education, think about how those are showing that it can fulfill the role of maybe a mentor or a coach. So think also about how, as you're preparing to go to trial, you could get into a back and forth with a Gen AI model to try to tease out what your arguments are and what a counter argument might be. And then what would be a good comeback for that counter argument? How can I structure my argument to make sure that that counter argument can't even see the light of day? So there's a lot here to unpack, and I wouldn't want, simply because this is very new, simply because this is something that is changing really quickly, I wouldn't want this industry to lose out, because I really do see, I came away from last year's Bar Association, it's the end of the day, from last week's Bar Association meeting. I was more convinced than ever that this is a tool that can really help this industry. It can really help attorneys and the people managing the law firms. It can absolutely help. That said, it is 10 after 5 here on the East Coast. So I am going to call it a day. I just have been talking data since 9 this morning, pretty much nonstop. And if you know anything about me, you know I love talking me some linear regression, but it's been a lot. So I'm going to leave you with those thoughts of mine. What do you think about those? Do they hold water? Am I full of hot air? Am I forgetting something? Let me know. Leave a comment below. And are you someone who would like to bring some data to your planning for this year, for your business, but you're not quite sure where to start? Well, I've got a short course called Fearless Forecasting. It's 4 weeks where I will walk you through the basics of generating forecasts for your business. We use Excel. We don't use any fancy statistical software. And you can find more information and sign up on my website, jlaanalytics.com/fearless_forecasting. And with that, I will say thank you so much for joining. If you're watching the replay, thank you so much for watching. And until next week, go forth and analyze.